In this daily drop, we're going to be talking about RGB IC lighting and specifically the Govee curtain light. So let's go. All right, here we are right before the Christmas holiday. This is the last episode for the week. It's one I've been wanting to do for a long time. And the reason is that usually around the Black Friday, Cyber Week time period, I get suckered in, usually in a good way, to buying some sort of lighting that's on sale. And this year was no different. I got the Govee curtain light. It isn't on sale anymore, but it was $40 off what it normally is. And this is using a technology called Rgbic. So Rgbic stands for red, green, blue in chip. So the difference between this and some other technologies, and let me go ahead and turn the light on so we can start to see some of that, is that each individual LED carries RGB inside of it, inside one of those little diode thingamabobs. So it has the ability to be programmed so that every single LED in the array is an individual color. Now, the downside to Rgbic, at least the one I have here with this Govee curtain light, is it doesn't have any white LEDs inside of those individual elements over there. So to get a true or accurate white color, this is ridiculous, by the way. let me just go to a color. Here, we can kind of cycle through warm white and cool white while I'm talking about this. I can't actually see what's happening. I'm just somewhat familiar with the light now, and I'm controlling it here from the Govee home app. And when we go between warm and cool light with this curtain, it's very hard to get an accurate, what I would say, white light, something that we would use to light talent. So RGB ACL, or red, green, blue, amber, cyan, lime, will do that very well. RGB WW, which has two whites, generally a warm and a cooler white, will do that very well. But when I'm cycling through here, it's not like I'm able to pick a Kelvin temperature. And you will see that if you're trying to use it as white light for talent, that very oftentimes it's going to have a magenta or a green cast. So just keep that in mind, that this is more of a specialty light that you'll use for certain effects and things like that. But it's still pretty dang cool for $90 to $130 US. Now, the light itself is about, I believe, 5 to 5.5 feet wide and 6 feet tall for each of these different strings. And you can hang it up a number of different ways. If you look here, what I'm doing is just using a boom pole, and I'm using this double stick tape that I have called Alien tape, which is fantastic because it comes off very, very easily. Govee gives you a number of other mounting options here, including little hooks that go onto the top part of the light, so you can hang it off of different hooks that it comes with. And that's basically the deal. I'm just kind of hanging it this way. What you're not seeing in this frame right now, well, you are seeing the full width, but you're not seeing the full height. So we're missing about 1/3 of the height right now. You're seeing, I'm going to say, approximately 4 feet of it. And the light itself is about 3 feet away from me. And again, I wouldn't generally use the light this way, but I just want you to see what the light is capable of, or this Rgbic curtain is capable of. So that's basically the deal. We're going to go through some of the different features in the app and some of the things that you can do with this. But normally I would be using this light maybe 90 degrees to talent here. So something that's, maybe you're doing a club scene or something like that. Shoot at a slow shutter speed and have music playing. In fact, I can do a little demo of that in a few minutes, and we can kind of see how the music is affecting it. You did see earlier that my voice was affecting it. So it does have a chip inside of it that's doing that. But while we're on color, I can just pick different colors here and it'll change to them, and you can see how that's affecting it. And just as another note, right now I have my camera set to daylight, basically. It's set to 5700 Kelvin. And that's probably a good place to start when you're using color in your frame in terms of your key source and the way your camera's set up. But by all means, experiment, set your camera to a warmer or a cooler color temperature and see how the colors are reading on camera. Now, one thing to note, which a good friend of mine, cinematographer Beck, pointed out, is that when you're shooting with color, and you're using light fixtures that are RGB based, it's still generally, there's no hard rules here if you're going for something very specific, but it's usually generally a smart idea to have some sort of key source that is giving you something on talent that's showing correct skin tone. Again, rules are meant to be broken, especially when you're starting to introduce lots of color and in certain genres. But I would say as a starting point, set your key, whatever that is, from the back, from the front, from the side, at a daylight color temperature. Set your camera to match that, and then start to play around and see what you're getting and what effect that you're getting with stuff. All right, so general colors you can see are pretty easy to dial in here. I'm just picking them here from the app. And there's a color wheel I can go into, and I can, swipe and do all of that kind of stuff. We don't need to do, well, I can if you want. There you go. We've seen stuff like that. There's also this cool color wheel. They've got all kinds of ways to pick different colors inside of the app. So you get that general idea. And then there's this thing called finger sketch, which is kind of wild. What we're looking at right here, it's kind of hard for you to see. Maybe actually I'll give it a color. Is I'm going to go ahead and make the background an entire color. And when I say background, I mean the curtain light. And what we're doing here is we're mapping color to each one of those individual RGB IC, I'm going to call them diodes. And if I apply this now, you'll see that the whole thing becomes one color. But what's so cool about this is now I can choose a separate color, which is going to be used to essentially choose individual LEDs here. So I'm going to go in and let's choose, doesn't matter. I'm just going to choose a certain color, and I'm going to start to choose certain, maybe I'll do 5 rows here. Certain LEDs, there's 5 rows. Whoops, I can erase that. That's pretty easy to do. I'm starting to learn how this works. Go to the eraser, erase it, and then we're going to go ahead and apply that. And boom, there we go. Now remember, again, we're only sort of seeing the top 2/3 of this. Okay, so you can see that. And now what's happening is it's got some speed. So I can turn the speed down and say apply, and it'll just stop that movement. And then there's different movements that I can apply based on what I'm doing with this. It's kind of wild. Here, let's bring that speed back up. So now it's just staying where it is. I can move it from top to bottom, say apply, and then it'll actually start to take those rows that I created and move them. And there's, I mean, sky's the limit in terms of this. It's kind of crazy sauce in terms of what you can do. Now we're going to move into another category here called scenes. And this is crazy because there's a ton of categories: Govee artist, natural, festival, life, funny, animals, nightlife, all kinds of stuff. But let's just take a look at a couple of these. So this is natural. Let's take a look at meteor. So we've got a meteor. Let me move off to the side. There we go. Let's move over to festival. It's that time of year, so let's take a look at Christmas. And again, you're only seeing about 2/3 of this right now, so you're not seeing the entire Christmas tree. But if this was a little bit further away, then you would be able to see that. Anything in life that I want to see? Not really. And we're going to go over here to funny. Kind of odd, but I don't know why crossing is funny, but that's kind of interesting. Lots of animals. There's a butterfly. Night scenes, space, forest, fireflies, decorations. All right, here's one. All right, let's go with this. You know what that's all about. I have a feeling if this is a little bit further away, you might see the binary component of this, the zeros and ones, but you get the basic idea. All right, and there's nothing behind this right now. The little strings are kind of clearish, so they will pick up a little bit of reflections and stuff like that, but there's your scene component. There is apparently a way you can upload a GIF file to this as well, and I haven't yet been able to figure that out. I'm sort of about 2/3 of the way there, but you get the basic idea. So let's go over to music again. I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, play something that might work for this, and we'll take a look at a couple of options for voice or sound activation. I'm going to dip to black and come back, and we'll check that out. All right, here we are. Got some music going from Audio with 2 eyes. So I've licensed this. I have a subscription. And you can kind of see what's happening here. Maybe I'll turn that down just a wee bit. And right now we're in music mode, which is using the built-in sensor that's part of this system. And I'm using something called falling sand right now. But let's take a look at color flip. Now, there's usually more than this in terms of the number of squares that you're seeing. But again, with this frame, we're seeing about 2/3 or almost 2/3 of these different squares here. And you can see how the voice activation is working. Here's meteor shower. Very subtle with this type of music, but maybe I can pull up a different track and we can see how that sounds. All right, so here's a different track with meteor shower, and you can see it's obviously a little bit more effective using this spectrum. Kind of cool, especially if you can see the whole thing. It's kind of like audio meters. All right, that's enough of that. Let's think about how that might be applied if I move this to here or over here for talent, and maybe had my shutter speed set to something a lot slower, kind of a dream sequence. Going through the night, everything's totally fine in the beginning. Shutter starts to change, gets slower and slower. The person's drinking, they're getting, you know, drunk. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that word. Or maybe, you know, somebody slipped something to them and they're starting to hallucinate or whatever it's going to be. And, you know, this could be a way to have fun with these lights. Now, right now we're seeing kind of the background inside of the space, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk in a neutral gray background, and we'll take a look at what that looks like with sort of a blooming effect that you can create. And again, this might be something that you would have off camera as well, just in terms of creating a little bit more spread in terms of the light. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. You can see with that gray background now, we're kind of getting that blooming effect that's starting to happen behind me, which is kind of interesting, I think. And, you know, that's not the only way you can activate the music. You can actually use the mic inside of your device. Now, I'm a big fan of not using a phone, and you can see how much different it is now that I'm using the mic on my device because I'm very close proximity to it. I like to have a dedicated tablet for filmmaking apps. I think it's a lot smarter. This is party. Jeez. This is dynamic. And this is called calm. And then you can change the sensitivity. And then I can also go back to what we had before, which are these presets. Back to falling sand. You get the basic idea. All right, so there you go. Lots of stuff to think about. The only other thing I would say is maybe it makes sense for me to put a black background behind here so that you can see what that feels like, because sometimes you'll want to do that. Also, just as an idea, you might want to get some spike tape, like black gaff spike tape. If there are times where you want to see less reflectance here, on the actual wiring. So you could actually just wrap it. You could, I guess, use something like a Sharpie or that type of pen, but I wouldn't want to do something permanent because sometimes you want it to be more clear and sometimes you want it to be more opaque or black or something like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at it with the black background, which should read quite a bit differently than the gray that we have behind me. All right, so now I just have black duvetine behind me, and you can see how that feels. And definitely reacting differently than if you have that neutral gray background. And it's just really about experimentation when you're trying lighting like this. Try to figure out how you can integrate it into the things that you're doing. Of course, you have the kooky things, which are the Christmas trees and the meteor showers and things like that. But for me, it's more about the solid colors or creating specific patterns. You can even write words into this. I probably wouldn't and have that animate. But it's things like this voice and music, or we'll call it sound activation mode, that's really interesting to me for certain types of scenes that you might be shooting, especially for narrative-based content when you are doing your productions. So there you have it. This is the Govee curtain light, my buy for the year. If you have watched The Daily Drop, you've seen all those other colored lights in the background. That's all part of that nonsense every Black Friday into Cyber Week. I wanted to get to this a little bit earlier, but it takes time to set this stuff up. Next week's episodes, at least the first 3, will be a little bit different than they normally are. And I wish everybody a great Christmas holiday if that's what you celebrate. Otherwise, happy holidays. But I will be back for the final week of the year. Don't forget to. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.